The Purposes of God. This is video 16 in our special 29-part series of this prophetic series of the Purposes of God. Again, I am your host, Doug Krieger of the Tribulation Network. In video 16 on the Purposes of God, we will once again be discussing the year 2012 and the year 2016 as the midpoint of the 70th week of Daniel, and finally the years 2018 and 2019 as the terminus of the 70th week of Daniel. Of course, in the middle of the 70th week is the abomination of desolation, but at its conclusion commences the year of Jubilee. Calculating the year of Jubilee. Calculating elapsed years to determine the right year in the Jubilee cycle, that is, any future Jubilee, using the Hebrew calendar Mariana Tioran used as her start date or years beginning in 70 AD, and using September 2008-2009 or the Jewish calendar year of 5769 in counting into the future. However, we will use the current 2011-2012 year of 5772 of the Jewish calendar. The second temple was destroyed in 70 AD. The Jewish calendar year of that was 3829. Thus, this was the first year of a 7-year cycle, if you would, and there would be 7 such cycles for 49 years, each until the 50th year of Jubilee, which would have occurred during the 2nd century. Now, moving on toward Daniel's 70th week, the number of years elapsed since 3829 of the Jewish calendar year, that is, in the Gregorian calendar year of 6970 AD, to the Jewish calendar year of 5772, or the Gregorian dates of 2011-2012 AD, are 1943 Jewish calendar years. The last Jubilee year on the Jewish calendar, but not currently observed since Israel is still not all returned to their land, should have been in the Gregorian calendar year of 1968 or 1969, the year following Jerusalem's Temple Mount coming under Israeli jurisdiction. That is, if we were to have counted from 70 AD of the Gregorian calendar up through to where we are today, the last year of Jubilee to have been celebrated would have been in 1968, 1969, very close to the Jerusalem Temple Mount coming under Israeli control, which would have been in 1967. We shall discover that the Jubilee is vitally involved with the initiation of the 70 weeks, the timeline of the 70 weeks of Daniel's prophecy, the terminus of the 70 weeks, the second coming of Messiah, the feast or Moed at the last day, the pivotal day of atonement, and the heralding of the future millennium. Since 70 AD, 38.86 sets of Jubilees. In Leviticus 25, we read of the year of Jubilee as follows: "And you shall count 7 Sabbaths of years for yourself, 7 times 7 years, and the time of the 7 Sabbaths of years shall be to you 49 years, with the final year, the 50th year, being the year of Jubilee." If we divide these 1943 Jewish calendar years by 50, that is, every 50 year, a year of Jubilee, it will equal to 38.86 sets of Jubilee years. 50 times 38.86 is equal to 1,943 elapsed years since 70 AD, or since the year 3,829 of the Jewish calendar date. Roughly 1,900 years have elapsed from 70 AD to 1968-1969. From 2011-2012 going back to 1968-69 would equal 43 years ago, the last time of a Jubilee year date. Note, 2011-2012 is the 43rd year. 7 of these 7 of years make up the 49 years of the Jubilee cycle. And we read on. From 1968-69, add on 49 years, with the 50th year being the next year of Jubilee. This brings us to 2018-2019, the next year of Jubilee. This means there will be another Jubilee in 7 or 8 years, counting from 2011-2012 AD, at the end of the solar cycle 24. Beginning of solar cycle 25, making the next year of Jubilee to commence between years 2018 and 2019 on the solar calendar. The 70th week ends with the year of Jubilee, and I'd like to again thank Dr. Gavin Finley for his fine efforts in these calculations. Incidentally, these calculations, that is the 7/8 years from 2011-2012, from 5772 unto the next Jewish calendar year of Jubilee in the years 2018-2019, or the Jewish calendar year of 5780, would demand we calculate back from 2018 and 19, that is from 5780 on the Jewish calendar year, 7 years and 75 days, putting us somewhere around 2011-2012, or the Jewish calendar year of 5772, for the commencement of Daniel's 70th week. In these prophetic scenarios, we're very close to the commencement of the 70th week of Daniel. Mariana Tioran's current year was in September 2008-2009, 5769 on the Jewish calendar year, bringing us to the present years of 2011-2012, that is 5772 of the Jewish calendar year. She calculates an additional 7 to 8 years from 2011-2012 to arrive at the next year of Jubilee, that is 2018-2019, or 5779 of the Jewish calendar year. Her timing seems to indicate 2012 as the pivotal year for the commencement of Daniel's 70th week, or the beginning of 2013 would also work. Her beginning date of calculating the sets of Jubilee from 70 AD may be, however, a conjecture needing further inquiry. But the 70th week could begin in 2012, or the Jewish calendar year of 5772. And 7 years later, 2019, would become the year of Jubilee would begin, and Messiah's coming would be heralded. The Third Temple. This presentation does not, in the main, concern ourselves with the Second Temple, the so-called Herodian Temple, but with the prophetic ramifications of the Third Temple, found both in Daniel's chapters 7 through 12 and in the Revelation yet future. The following conviction is herewith unequivocal. Within the 70th week of Daniel's 2,520 days, on the 250th day of that week, that is, from Passover, the commencement of any given 70th week, would extend 250 days from that Passover date to the very feast of dedication of a new temple. There shall be this spiritual demonstration among prophetic Israel of the Third Temple. The 250th day connotes, once again, the sacred cubit, for its celebration will extend unto the 252nd day. A great spiritual struggle shall commence between Antichrist and Israel, and they who have the testimony of Jesus. But the time of sacrifice shall abide for 1,010 days, from the 250th day of the commencement of the 70th week unto the middle of the week. All of this was foretold in Daniel chapter 8, verses 13 and 14. And the prophesying of the two witnesses, Israel and the church, will abide 1,260 days. That is one half of 2520. With great authority and witness, it shall possess the first 1,260 days of the week unto the abomination of desolation in the midst of the week. Daniel chapter 9, verse 27. Both the third temple and the temple of God, man's spirit, shall be made desolate by Satan's declaration of godhood and temple desecration in Jerusalem. Persecution, perseverance, judgment. The final half of Daniel's 70th week, the 1,260 days or 42 months or times and half a time, or 3.5 years or 3.5 days. Both Israel and the church shall endure the beast, who shall make war against them, overcome them, and kill them. Open persecution in the street of the great city will purify and refine the saints. The first and only major resurrection of the just will come at the conclusion of the 70th week of Daniel, found in Daniel chapter 12, verse 2, and Revelation chapter 20, verse 6. The marriage ceremony and ultimate return of Messiah, known as the marriage supper of the Lamb, will include all saints from Adam to the first resurrection at the terminus of the 30 days of Daniel 12:11. 30 days beyond the 1,260 days unto the 1,290th day, the final 30 days of the wrath of the Lamb beyond 1,260 days of the final half of Daniel's 70th week, there will be 30 days of the wrath of the Lamb. This brings us to the time of blessedness and the fourth temple of Ezekiel 40, the millennial temple. Yes, no man knows the day or the hour of the coming of the Son of Man. But why? For one, it is not a feast day on the Jewish calendar. It will bring with it a time of great blessedness. It will occur at the conclusion of the 30 days of desolations, the end of desolations, the 1,290 days of desolations spoken of in Daniel chapter 12. And it will usher in a time of great blessedness and the final cleansing of and dedication of the fourth temple during the 45 days of Daniel chapter 12 and verse 12, where it states, "Blessed is he who waits and comes to the 1,335 days. This will be the commencement of the marriage supper of the Lamb, and it will also be a time of 75 days between the Feast of Trumpets and the Trumpets of the Atonement to the Feast of Dedication, the final dedication, which will open up thereafter into the great year of Jubilee and the millenarian reign of the Son of David. Now, the measurements of Ezekiel's temple provide another prophetically dynamic 1,000 years of the Lion of the tribe of Judah, who shall rule and reign from Jerusalem and commence the year of Jubilee. At the close of the 75 days, a time between the Feast of Atonement and dedication, as I have said, there are precisely 75 days. Then it shall be fulfilled to seal up vision and prophecy, and to anoint the most holy place at the end of the 75 days. This is found in Daniel chapter 9 and verse 24. Now we have a very elaborate chart. I don't mean to go into any detail here. I would like you to pause it and look at it and become familiar with some of its ramifications and the dates and so forth. This is the final 70th week of Daniel's prophecy of 20 days, which again has to do with the sacred cubit. And then there are 75 days beyond the 20 days, which would bring us to the 1335th day. Please be aware of this chart. Please pause it. This is the conclusion of video number 16. Again, I am your host, Doug Krieger of the Tribulation Network. And now let's move on to video number 17 as you pause on this particular video to grasp the prophetical significance of the coming 70th week of Daniel's prophecy. Thank you again for listening and for viewing, and we move on to video number 17.